My family tried to force me to sell my house at Xmas dinner. I handed them eviction notices. Before we dive into this true life story of ultimate family betrayal and the sweet taste of revenge, I want to hear from you in the comments. What is the absolute worst thing a family member has ever tried to do to you during the holidays? Have you ever had to kick someone out of your own house? Let me know down below. The dining room smelled like roasted turkey and expensive perfume, a scent that always made my stomach turn. It was Christmas dinner, and the crystal chandelier, my grandfather's pride and joy, glittered above the table. I sat at the end, quietly eating my mashed potatoes, while my mother, Beatrix, held court at the head of the table. My stepfather, Vance, was pouring wine like water, and my brother, Julian, was whispering to his wife, Kara. The air felt heavy, charged with a static electricity that usually meant bad news. Beatrix tapped her spoon against her wine glass. The sharp ding, ding, ding silenced the room. "We have a surprise," she announced, her smile stretching too wide. "A Christmas miracle, really. We're selling the house." I froze, my fork hovering halfway to my mouth. Before I could speak, the heavy oak doors to the dining room swung open. A man I had never seen before walked in. He wore a suit that cost more than my car and had a smile that didn't reach his cold, shark-like eyes. "This is Mr. Sterling," Vance said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the gravy boat toward me. "We've already accepted the offer on your behalf, Orion. The market is hot. This money will fund Julian's new startup and get us a nice condo in the city." "On my behalf?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I own this house, not you." "Don't be difficult," Beatrix snapped. "We all know you aren't fit to manage an estate this size. Sign the deed transfer now, or we tell everyone about your little, mental breakdown last year. We'll have you declared incompetent." My blood ran cold. The breakdown they were referring to was when I fainted from exhaustion after working 2 jobs to pay the property taxes they refused to help with. They were gaslighting me. They were trying to steal my legacy while I sat eating turkey. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but my hands were steady. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I didn't pull out a pen. I pulled out a thick manila envelope I had been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. I dropped it directly on top of their sale contract. "I expected this," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "That isn't a deed. It's a 30-day notice to quit. Get out." The silence that followed was deafening. It was as if I had thrown a grenade onto the table instead of an envelope. Beatrix's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. She stood up so fast her chair tipped over backward, crashing against the hardwood floor. "You ungrateful little brat," she screamed, spit flying from her mouth. "You are ruining Christmas. After everything we've done for you. We let you live here. You let me live here." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I own the roof over your head. I pay the heat you're complaining about. I pay for the water in your glass." Mr. Sterling stepped forward. He didn't look at the eviction notice. He looked at Vance. The shark smile was gone, replaced by a look of dangerous irritation. "Vance," Sterling said, his voice low and gravelly. "You told me he was on board. You told me the papers were ready." "He is. He will be," Vance stammered, sweat instantly beading on his forehead. "He's just having an episode. Ignore him." "I'm not having an episode," I said, locking eyes with Sterling. "And this house is not for sale. Not today, not ever." Sterling let out a cold laugh. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a receipt. "That's unfortunate, because I gave your stepfather a $50,000 consulting fee upfront to secure this property today. I want that money back. Now." All eyes turned to Vance. He looked like he was about to vomit. I don't have it on me," Vance whispered. "Where is it, Vance?" Sterling asked, taking a step closer. "The car," Julian blurted out from the side of the table. "The new Porsche in the driveway. He bought it yesterday." Sterling looked at Vance, then at the car keys on the table. "You spent my money before the ink was dry." "Orion," Beatrix shrieked, turning on me. "Pay him. Write him a check right now. Do you want your stepfather to get his legs broken? You selfish monster." "Not my debt," I said, picking up my wine glass. "Not my problem." I turned my back on the chaos and walked out of the dining room. Behind me, the shouting match was escalating into a frenzy. I needed to get to my wing of the house, the servants' quarters that I had converted into a smart home fortress. I walked down the long hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this wasn't over. They wouldn't just leave. They were like ticks, they had burrowed in deep. As I reached the door to my hallway, I heard a loud buzzing sound. I rounded the corner and stopped. Vance was there. He had a power drill in his hands. He was trying to drill through the lock of my bedroom door. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked. Vance spun around, the drill still whirring. "I'm changing the locks. If you want to act like a landlord, I'll treat you like a trespasser in your own home. You're out on the street tonight, Orion." "That's not how it works, Vance," I said calmly. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I opened my home security app. I had spent months upgrading the entire house with smart locks, mostly to keep them out of my private office, but now it was my greatest weapon. I tapped a button labeled Guest Wing, Lockdown. From down the hall, behind Vance, we heard a series of loud, mechanical clicks. Click, 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 click. Vance froze. "What was that?" "That," I said, "was the sound of every bedroom door in the main wing locking. Including yours. Including Julian's. You are now locked out of your rooms. Your clothes, your beds, your chargers, they are all inside." Vance ran to the nearest door and tried the handle. It was solid as a rock. He kicked it, but the solid oak didn't budge. "Open it," he screamed. "I can't," I lied. "The system is in emergency mode. It only unlocks when the threat is removed. Or when you tell me why you really need to sell this house today. And don't tell me it's for a startup." Vance was banging on the door with his fists, cursing my name. But then, the hallway door opened, and Julian and Kara walked in. They looked pale. Julian, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, looked like a ghost. "Open the doors, Orion," Julian pleaded. "My heart medication is in there." "You don't have a heart condition, Julian," I said. "You take vitamins." "Please," Julian whispered, leaning against the wall. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor. "You don't understand. It's not just a startup." I stood over him. "Talk." Julian looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I owe money. A lot of money. I got into online gambling. Sports betting. I lost everything, Orion. I lost our savings. I borrowed money from people, friends of Mr. Sterling." My jaw tightened. "How much?" 200,000, Julian sobbed. "Plus interest. They said if I didn't pay by the new year, they would take it out on me physically." Mom and Vance knew. They promised Sterling the house as collateral to wipe the debt. I looked at Vance. He wasn't meeting my eyes. "So that's it," I said, feeling a hole burning in my chest. "You weren't selling the house to move to a condo. You were selling my grandfather's legacy, my inheritance, to save Julian from his own stupidity." "He's your brother," Vance shouted. "We had to protect him. You have the house, you have everything. Why couldn't you just give us this one thing?" "Because it wasn't yours to give," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You brought loan sharks to my doorstep. You endangered me. You endangered this home." I tapped my phone, unlocking the doors. The click echoed in the silence. "The doors are open," I said. "But the timeline has changed. You don't have 30 days. You have 7. Get out." I didn't sleep that night. I barricaded my door with a chair, not trusting the electronic locks alone. The next morning was Christmas Day, but there were no presents under the tree. Instead, there were flashing red and blue lights in the driveway. I looked out the window. 2 police cruisers were parked out front. I walked downstairs, my phone recording video in my pocket. Beatrix was standing on the porch, weeping into the chest of a police officer. Vance stood behind her, looking solemn and concerned. "He's dangerous," Beatrix sobbed loudly. "He threatened us with a drill. He locked us in our rooms and told us we would freeze to death. He's elderly abusing us." The officer looked up as I opened the front door. "Sir, step out with your hands visible." "Officer," I said calmly, keeping my hands up. "I am the homeowner. These people are my relatives who are currently being evicted." "He has a weapon," Beatrix screamed. "He has a gun in his room." "I do not own a gun," I said. "And I have security footage of the entire incident from last night." The officer paused. "Footage?" "Yes," I said. "I have video of my stepfather, Vance, threatening me with a power drill. I have audio of them admitting to trying to sell my house fraudulently. Would you like to see it?" Beatrix stopped crying instantly. Her face went pale. I pulled out my phone and played the clip from Chapter 3. The officer watched Vance revving the drill, screaming that I was out on the street. He listened to the threats. The officer handed the phone back to me and turned to Vance. "Sir, this video clearly shows you are the aggressor. You are holding a power tool in a threatening manner. It was a joke." Vance stammered. "It doesn't look like a joke," the officer said sternly. "This is a civil matter regarding the eviction, but if I receive one more call about threats, or if I see that drill again, you will be the one in handcuffs. Do you understand?" The police left. Beatrix glared at me with pure hatred. "You think you're so smart," she hissed. "But we aren't going anywhere." "Tick-tock," I said. 6 days left. The war had officially begun. Since they couldn't physically attack me without getting arrested, they decided to attack my wallet. I was working in my home office when I noticed the temperature rising. It was getting hot, stiflingly hot. I checked the thermostat app. It read 90 degrees. I went into the main hallway. The heat was blasting from every vent. It felt like a sauna. I could hear water running, loudly. I went to the guest bathroom. The sink was running full blast hot water. The shower was running. I checked the kitchen. The faucet was wide open. They were trying to run up my utility bills. They wanted to bleed me dry. I found Vance sitting in the living room in his underwear, sweating, watching TV with a smug grin. "Chilly today, isn't it, Orion?" he sneered. "Very funny," I said. I didn't turn the water off. I didn't turn the heat down. I walked back to my wing and went down to the basement utility room, the one they didn't have a key to. I looked at the manifold system I had installed during the renovations. The house was zoned. My wing was on Zone A. The main house was on Zone B. I pulled out my phone and called the water company and the gas company. "Yes," I said loudly, so they could hear me through the floorboards. "I need to report an emergency renovation. I need to shut off service to the main dwelling unit immediately for safety reasons." "Yes, just Zone B." I turned the large red valve for the main house water supply. Clunk. I flipped the breaker for the main house furnace. Click. I went back upstairs. Within an hour, the rushing water stopped. Within 3 hours, the house began to cool down rapidly. I sat in my heated office, drinking a cold glass of water. Suddenly, there was a pounding on my door. "Orion, the toilets won't flush. It's freezing out here." "Renovations," I yelled back. "Terrible timing. Should be fixed in, about 6 days." The cold was seeping into their bones by the next morning. They were walking around wrapped in 3 layers of blankets. I, however, was wearing a t-shirt in my warm wing. Kara, Julian's wife, decided it was her turn to play a card. She cornered me in the kitchen while I was making coffee. She wasn't wearing a coat. She was rubbing her belly. "You can't do this, Orion," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to tell you yet, but I'm pregnant." I stopped stirring my coffee. "Pregnant?" "Yes," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Stress is bad for the baby. Freezing temperatures are bad for the baby. You can't evict a pregnant woman in the middle of winter. No judge will allow it. You have to let us stay." For a second, I felt a pang of guilt. A baby? Was I really going to throw a child out into the snow? I looked at Julian. He was nodding vigorously, looking like a proud, victimized father. "We need the heat back on," Julian said. "For the baby." I almost caved. Almost. But then I remembered something. I walked over to the recycling bin in the corner of the kitchen. I dug through the trash they had generated yesterday. I pulled out a receipt from the liquor store down the street. It was dated Christmas Eve, 2 days ago. "Cabernet Sauvignon," I read aloud. "1 bottle. And I found the empty bottle in the living room this morning." "Did you drink a whole bottle of wine while pregnant, Kara?" Kara's face went white. And, I continued, walking to the bathroom trash can which I hadn't emptied yet. I used a paper towel to pick up a small, empty cardboard box. I also found this box of tampons. Open, used. I dropped the box on the table. "You aren't pregnant," I said, my voice hard as stone. "You are lying about an unborn child to keep a roof over your head. That is a new low, even for you." Kara burst into tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of humiliation. Julian looked at the floor. 5 days, I said. The fake pregnancy hadn't worked, so they brought in the legal guns. Or at least, what they thought were guns. On day 3, a car pulled up. A man in a cheap suit stepped out, carrying a briefcase that looked like it was made of cardboard. This was Vance's lawyer, a guy named Saul who probably chased ambulances for a living. They sat me down at the kitchen table. It was freezing in the kitchen, so Saul kept blowing on his hands. "Mr. Orion," Saul said, trying to sound authoritative. "My clients have informed me of your illegal eviction attempts. You need to be aware of adverse possession laws and squatters' rights." "Is that so?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Yes," Saul said. "They have lived here for 10 years. They have contributed to groceries. They have established residency. You cannot remove them without a 6-month court process. If you try, we will sue you for damages." Vance looked triumphant. "Gotcha," he mouthed. I stood up and walked to my filing cabinet. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was yellowed with age. 5 years ago, I said, placing the paper in front of Saul, Vance was having tax trouble. He wanted to hide his income and assets. So, he asked me to sign this. Saul looked at the paper. His eyes widened. "It's a caretaker agreement," I explained. To save on taxes, Vance classified himself and the family not as tenants, but as at-will employees, live-in caretakers. It says right here, caretaker housing is a condition of employment and may be terminated at any time without notice upon cessation of duties. I smiled at Vance. "You fired yourself when you tried to sell my house. You aren't tenants. You're fired employees. In this state, employee housing has 0 tenant protections. I can kick you out instantly." Saul closed his folder. He stood up. "You didn't tell me about this, Vance," Saul said angrily. "I forgot," Vance screamed. "I can't help you," Saul said, walking to the door. "Good luck." Beatrix realized the law wasn't on her side. So, she turned to the only court she thought she could manipulate, the court of public opinion. I was checking my emails when my phone started blowing up with notifications. Neighbors were texting me, "How could you? And, I thought you were a nice guy." I opened Facebook. Beatrix was live streaming. She was standing on the front lawn, shivering dramatically. She had taken off her coat for the video. She had fake tears running down her face. "My own son," she wailed into the camera. "He's had a mental break. He's off his meds. He's throwing his sick, elderly mother out into the snow. We have nowhere to go. He's locked us out of the heat. Please, someone help us." The view count was climbing. 500 viewers, 1,000 viewers. The comments were vicious. "What a monster. Someone needs to go over there and teach him a lesson. Call the news." I looked out the window. A pickup truck slowed down as it passed the house. The driver rolled down the window and screamed, "Scumbag." Before throwing a brick, it smashed through the front bay window, shattering glass all over the living room floor. They were turning the town against me. They were trying to get me hurt. I looked at the shattered glass. That was it. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I sat down at my computer. I opened my video editing software. I had gigabytes of footage from the last few days. I started splicing. Clip 1. Vance threatening me with the drill. Clip 2. Julian admitting to the $200,000 gambling debt and the plan to sell the house to cover it. Clip 3. Beatrix shouting, "We had to protect him," regarding the theft of the house. Clip 4. Kara admitting she wasn't pregnant and the receipt for the wine. Clip 5. The caretaker agreement document showing they were mooching tax cheats. I titled the video, "The Truth About My Eviction." I posted it directly in the comments section of Beatrix's live stream. I also posted it to the local community page and tagged the neighbors who had insulted me. It took about 20 minutes. The comments on Beatrix's stream stopped. Then, the tone shifted. "Wait, is that a drill? They stole his house. She lied about a baby. Sick. Hashtag Team Orion." The internet turned on them with the ferocity of a tidal wave. The support for Beatrix evaporated. People started commenting on her hypocrisy. Beatrix was still streaming, crying, when she looked at her phone. Her face went slack. She read the comments. She realized she had been exposed. She ended the stream abruptly and deleted her account, but it was too late. The truth was out. The viral video saved my reputation, but it attracted a different kind of attention. The next day, I went out to check the mail. A black SUV was parked at the end of the driveway. The window rolled down. It was Mr. Sterling. He didn't look like a businessman anymore. He looked like a thug. "You're making a lot of noise, kid," Sterling said. "You're embarrassing your family. And you're embarrassing me. Get off my property," I said. Sterling opened the car door and stepped out. He was big. "I want my 50 grand. Your daddy Vance doesn't have it. So, you're going to pay it. Consider it a fee for me not burning this house down with you inside it." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I stood my ground. "I know who you are, Mr. Sterling," I said. "Or should I say, Mr. Kowalski. I did a reverse image search on you. You aren't a real estate developer. You were indicted for money laundering in Chicago 3 years ago. You're on parole." Sterling froze. His hand twitched toward his jacket. "Don't," I warned. "See that camera on the porch? It's streaming to a cloud server. And see my phone. I just sent a scheduled email to the local FBI field office. It contains your license plate, your alias, and the video of you trying to buy my house with illegal funds." Sterling looked at the camera. He looked at me. He realized I was radioactive. "You're a dead man," he growled. "If I disappear, the file opens," I said. "Run along." Sterling got back in his SUV and peeled out of the driveway. He wasn't coming back. With Sterling gone, I felt a momentary sense of relief, but the deadline was approaching. I needed to secure the house. I went to the attic to move some of my grandfather's old boxes into my wing, just in case the family decided to smash them in retaliation. I picked up a heavy wooden crate labeled, Office 1999. As I lifted it, the bottom gave way. Papers spilled everywhere, but something else fell out. A heavy, metal book. It was a ledger, and taped to it was a letter in my grandfather's handwriting. "Orion, if you are reading this, I am gone. I hid this because I didn't have the heart to send your mother to jail while I was alive. But you need to know the truth about Vance." My hands shook as I opened the ledger. It was a record of the estate's finances from the year my grandfather died. We are at the halfway point. The secrets are starting to spill out, and trust me, it gets darker from here. If you are enjoying this story, please hit the like button right now. It really helps the channel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Now, let's see what was in that ledger. I took the ledger to a friend of mine, Marcus, who was a forensic accountant. We sat in his office for hours while he went through the numbers. "Orion," Marcus said, looking up over his glasses. "This is bad. Like, felony bad. What is it?" "See these withdrawals." Marcus pointed to a series of entries. "In the 6 months before your grandfather died, when he was bedridden and heavily medicated, Vance was his power of attorney. Vance withdrew over $100,000 from the estate accounts. He labeled them as medical expenses, but I traced the routing numbers." "Where did the money go?" I asked. "To a shell company," Marcus said. "And that shell company paid for the down payment on Vance's sports car, a timeshare in Florida, and gambling debts." I sat back, stunned. Vance hadn't just leeched off me for 5 years. He had stolen from a dying man. He had robbed my grandfather while he lay on his deathbed. "This is embezzlement," Marcus said. "And elder abuse. The statute of limitations hasn't run out yet." I took the ledger. "Thank you, Marcus. I had the eviction notice. Now, I had the handcuffs. I drove home with a plan. I couldn't take them all down at once. I needed to divide and conquer. I needed a witness. I found Julian sitting on the back porch, smoking a cigarette. He looked miserable. "Julian," I said. He jumped. "What do you want?" "To gloat. I want to offer you a deal," I said. I sat down next to him. "I know about the gambling debt. I know you're scared, but I also know Vance stole $100,000 from Grandpa before he died." Julian's eyes widened. "What?" "I have the proof," I said, tapping the folder. "Vance is going to prison. But you don't have to go down with him. If you leave voluntarily today, and if you sign a statement confirming Vance handled the finances back then, I will give you $5,000. It's enough to get an apartment and start over." Julian looked at the folder. He looked at the house. He was the golden child, always protected, always weak. "5,000, he asked. "Cash," I said, "and immunity from me pressing charges against you for the attempted fraud with the house sale." Julian took a drag of his cigarette. "Okay, I'll do it." I felt a surge of hope. Maybe my brother wasn't fully gone. An hour later, Julian called a family meeting in the living room. Beatrix and Vance were there. I walked in, expecting Julian to confess and leave. Instead, Julian pulled out his phone. "Play it," Julian said to Vance. Vance pressed play on a recorder. My voice filled the room. "If you sign a statement, I will give you $5,000. But the audio was chopped. It sounded like, "I will give you $5,000 to lie about Vance and frame him." Julian smirked at me. "He tried to bribe me, Mom. He tried to pay me to frame Vance for stealing." Beatrix gasped. "You evil, manipulative little snake. Trying to turn brother against brother. We're calling the police." Vance shouted. "Extortion. Bribery." I stood there, shaking my head. "You idiot, Julian. You really are an idiot. We have you on tape." Julian crowed. "And I have you on tape," I said. I pulled out my own phone. I recorded the entire conversation. Unedited. I pressed play. The room heard Julian say, "Okay, I'll do it. Vance is a crook anyway. But I'm going to edit this to make you look bad so Mom doesn't get mad at me." The color drained from Julian's face. "The police are already tired of you," I said. "Call them, please. I'll play them the real tape, and then I'll play them the confession about the gambling." Julian slumped into the sofa. He had played his ace and lost. The defeat broke them. They realized they couldn't win legally, they couldn't win socially, and they couldn't win logically. So, they chose violence. I was in my room when I heard the smashing sound. Crash. I ran into the hallway. They were in the main living room. Vance had a sledgehammer. He was swinging it into the drywall. Beatrix was pouring bleach onto the expensive Persian rugs. Julian was throwing vases against the fireplace. "If we can't have it, nobody can," Vance screamed, swinging the hammer wildly. "We'll leave you a ruin. Let's see you sell a house with no walls." They were destroying my legacy. My first instinct was to run in and tackle them, but Vance had a hammer. Instead, I ran back to the utility closet. The house had an old fire suppression system, sprinklers in the ceiling of the main rooms. It hadn't been flushed in years. I grabbed the emergency lever. Yank, hiss. The sprinklers overhead exploded into action. But it wasn't clean water. It was black, oily, stagnant sludge that had been sitting in the pipes for a decade. It rained down on them. The black sludge covered Beatrix's face, ruined Vance's clothes, and coated the floor. They screamed, slipping and sliding in the mess. The destruction stopped immediately as they tried to escape the deluge. The house was a mess. The drywall was soaked, the carpets were ruined, and the smell was awful. But they were still there, shivering in wet clothes. Vance, ever the grifter, saw an opportunity. I heard him on the phone in the kitchen. "Yes, State Farm. I need to file a claim. Major water damage. A pipe burst, and vandals broke in and smashed the walls. We need an emergency payout immediately." He was trying to commit insurance fraud. He wanted to pocket the check for the damage he caused. I called the insurance company 5 minutes later. "This is Orion, the policyholder," I said. "I would like to flag a fraudulent claim attempt. The damage was caused intentionally by the occupants. I have video evidence of them smashing the walls before the water was activated." "Thank you, sir," the agent said. "We take fraud very seriously." The next morning, an insurance investigator arrived. He took one look at Vance, looked at my video, and handed Vance a card. "Mr. Vance," the investigator said, "insurance fraud is a felony. If you pursue this claim, we will prosecute. Do I make myself clear?" Vance nodded, defeated again. They were running out of options. They had no money for food, no money to move, and their car was out of gas. On day 5, I came home from a hardware store run to buy supplies to fix their mess and saw a truck in the driveway. Beatrix was on the front lawn. She had dragged out my grandfather's antique grandfather clock, the dining room chairs, and the silver set. She was holding a cash only sign. She was selling my furniture. $50 for the clock. She yelled to a guy in a pickup truck. "Sold," the guy said, reaching for his wallet. I slammed my car into park and jumped out. "Stop," I yelled. I ran over to the truck. "That clock is not hers to sell. It is stolen property." She said it's her house, the guy said, confused. "It is not," I said. I pulled out the deed copy I kept in my pocket now. "I am the owner. If you take that clock, you are receiving stolen goods. I will take a picture of your license plate and report it." The guy looked at Beatrix, then at me. "I don't need this drama. He got in his truck and drove away. Beatrix screamed at me, "We need money to eat. You're starving us." "You have a job, Vance," I said. "Oh wait, you don't. Maybe you should sell the Porsche. It's a lease." Vance cried. "I can't sell it." While cleaning up the damage from the sledgehammer incident in the living room, I noticed something odd. Vance had smashed a hole in the drywall near the fireplace. Inside the wall, nestled between the studs, was a plastic bag. I reached in and pulled it out. It was dusty. I opened it. It wasn't money. It was mail. Stacks and stacks of unopened envelopes from the IRS. I started reading. Notice of intent to levy. Final notice. Past due, $2.4 million. My jaw dropped. They weren't just broke. They were buried. Vance hadn't paid taxes on his consulting business in 10 years. He owed millions in penalties and interest. The reason they needed to sell the house so desperately wasn't just for the gambling debt. It was to flee the country. They were planning to take the house money and run before the IRS caught up with them. A cold realization washed over me. If the IRS seized their assets, and they could prove that Vance had contributed money to the house even a little, the IRS could put a lien on my house. I needed to sever ties legally and immediately. I called my lawyer. "You need to give the IRS everything," he said. "Show them the caretaker agreement. Prove they were employees, not owners. Prove the finances were separate. If I do that," I said, "the IRS will know exactly where Vance is." "He's going to fall anyway, Orion," my lawyer said. "Don't let him pull you down with him." I made a copy of the caretaker agreement and the eviction notice. I drove to the local IRS office and requested a meeting with a collection officer. I handed over the file. "He's living at this address," I told the agent. "But he is being evicted in 48 hours. He is not the owner." The agent looked at the file. "Thank you, Mr. Orion. We have been looking for him." The 7 days were up. It was the night before the eviction. The house was quiet. The heat was still off in the main zones. They were huddled in the living room by the fireplace, which they couldn't light because I hid the wood. I walked in. "Tomorrow is the day," I said. "The sheriff is coming at 8 a.m. If you leave tonight, voluntarily, I won't press criminal charges for the embezzlement of Grandpa's money. I'll let you walk away." It was a mercy offer. I just wanted them gone. Beatrix stood up. She looked haggard, her hair messy, her eyes wild. "We aren't going anywhere," she spat. "This is my house. I raised you here. You won't do it. You don't have the stomach to watch the police drag your mother out." "I gave you a chance," I said softly. "Go to hell," Vance muttered. "Okay," I said, turning around. "Then you go to prison." The next morning, the sun rose over a layer of frost on the lawn. At 8 a.m. sharp, a convoy arrived. It wasn't just the sheriff's department for the eviction. Behind them were 2 black sedans with government plates. I opened the front door. They're in the living room. The sheriff's deputies entered first. "Sheriff's department. Eviction order execution." Vance jumped up. "You can't do this." Then, the agents in suits walked in. "Vance Miller. We are with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. You are under arrest for tax evasion and fraud." Vance's eyes bulged. He tried to bolt toward the back door. "Runner!" An agent shouted. He didn't make it 3 steps. An agent tackled him into the coffee table, cuffing him instantly. Beatrix started screaming, "Get off him! Julian, help!" But Julian wasn't there. The deputies found him hiding in the coat closet, crying. It took an hour to clear the house. Vance was hauled away in the back of the federal car. Beatrix and Kara were escorted off the property by the deputies, screaming curses at me the whole time. Julian walked out with his head down, carrying a trash bag of his clothes. Finally, the doors closed. The sirens faded. I stood in the middle of the living room. It was trashed. There was black water stains on the walls. The glass was broken. The furniture was gone. But it was silent. For the first time in 5 years, it was quiet. I sat down on the floor, right in the middle of the mess. I thought I would feel triumphant. Instead, I just felt exhausted. I put my head in my hands and cried. Not for them, but for the relief. The heavy weight that had been crushing my chest for a decade was finally gone. A week later, I was cleaning out the master bedroom. Beatrix had left a lot of junk behind. I was tossing old magazines into a bin when I found a photo album. I opened it. It was pictures of my father, before he died. Tucked in the back flap was a sealed letter. It was addressed to me, in my father's handwriting. To Orion, when you are older. I opened it. Son, if you are reading this, I have failed. The business is failing. My partner, Vance, has leveraged everything. I think he is cooking the books. I'm trying to fix it, but the stress is killing me. If anything happens to me, don't trust him. And watch out for your mother, she is in love with him. I stared at the letter. My father hadn't just died of a heart attack. The stress Vance caused had killed him. And Beatrix had married the man who destroyed her husband. That was the final nail. Any lingering shred of guilt I had evaporated. They weren't family. They were parasites who had been feeding on us for generations. I spent the next 3 months restoring the house. I fixed the drywall, refinished the floors, and painted the walls. It looked beautiful again, but I couldn't live there. Too many ghosts. I listed the house for sale. It sold in a week to a nice young couple with a baby on the way. I took the money, a substantial fortune, and moved 3 states away to the coast. I bought a small, modern house overlooking the ocean. No guest rooms, no frantic holidays, just peace. One evening, my phone rang. It was a collect call from a federal penitentiary. You have a call from an inmate, Vance Miller. Press 1 to accept. I looked at the phone. I imagined Vance in a cell, and Beatrix living in a cheap motel somewhere, blaming the world for her problems. I smiled. I pressed the end call button. I walked out onto my deck, watching the sun set over the water, and took a deep breath of salt air. I was finally free. They tried to steal my past, but they only secured my future. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that subscribe button for more revenge stories. You can check out these playlists for more videos. I assume you will love them. Thanks for watching.